It is the weekend. Let us know how you're doing. I don't want to be rude. How are you, my darlings? So good to see everybody. Well, a lot is going on. I don't think people realize what's looming. As I said, we just had the Lions Gate portal to close. And what's important about the Lions Gate is that that's, again, if you just joining us, a flood of energy coming into the multiverse. When the sun in Leo lines up with Sirius, planet Earth, and Orion's belt, this energy is at a max. And this is what the ancients used to use to harness in order to create a joyful abundance reality. Because August, according to the Gregorian calendar, is the eighth month. And that month or that number eight is a number of prosperity and abundance. So on the eighth month or in the eighth month, you do certain rituals that are aligned with your values and your family belief system or traditions, and you create realities that you desire for your family. Now, this energy came in, or the portal, I should say, opened July 28th and it closed August the 12th. But on the 8th of August is the apex of the energy, the height of the energy when it reaches its peak. So a lot of things can happen during that time, not just in your life, but also the elite use our ancient knowledge to do certain things. And they did something on August the 8th that I will talk about in just a few minutes. But that portal has closed, but it doesn't have to close for you, right? Because you create whatever reality you desire whenever you want to, because you walk in alignment with prosperity, peace, joy, all of that. When you walk in alignment with that, you manifest whatever you desire at all times. Certain dates are just nice dates for you to know to really hone in on that energy. So, why did I bring on a special guest today? Because a lot of people don't realize that the war is coming to a close, if it hasn't already, the war between America and Iran. That means that now President Trump can focus on what's going on here in America. That's very, very critical because we've been waiting on news as it relates to our wealth. When is this wealth coming? That we were promised with Nasara and Jassara, the National Economic Security and Reformation Act, and the global version of that, even the Global Economic Security and Reformation Act. And we've heard information about supposedly high income coming in, universal high income, where everybody will get an allotment of money, a large sum of money every month into a non-interest bearing quantum account. We know that's going to happen. I've been reporting on that for, my God, 10, 11 years. But we're like, when? When? Now, what some people are saying is it has to happen soon because with the advent of AI is going to produce in an abundance of goods, right? And when you have an abundance of good being produced by automated systems or robots, that means people will not need to work. So how do you remedy this? Now we're going to have a surplus of goods and abundance of things that are here. Now we can live in luxury, but what does that matter if you don't have money or the resources? And this is where some economists, I don't know exactly where Dex Lattimore stands on that, but some economists have said that universal high income will come in. I call it, and have called it, Nasara benefits for the last decade. So many nations such as Bahrain, Qatar, and oil-rich nations already have universal high income. They term it something else, and they have sovereign wealth funds that are created because these nations are abundant in resources, like oil-rich nations are abundant in oil. And as such, the people in power make sure that money or that wealth trickle down to the people. However, what we're seeing happening is a promise of wealth while the economy seems to be in decay. So I'm going to talk about that. We're going to bring our special guest on, but let me introduce him and I'll talk to you about what happened on August the 8th during the course of our conversation. Many of you already know Dex Lattimore, but let me introduce him to those of you who have not met him yet. He is an economist and an entrepreneur. Mr. Lattimore received a dual bachelor's degree in economics and Pan-African studies with a minor in international business. He is world traveled and he's sat with many chiefs, presidents and prelates of different nations all over the world. He has worked with prelates, including kings and queens in Africa, and prime ministers and mayors in other parts of the world, including here in America. Mr. Lattimore has traveled to three continents and countries like Senegal, Ghana, and West Africa, Costa Rica, other South and Central American nations such as Brazil, and also he's been to the Caribbean island. And one of his specialties or favorites is Trinidad and Tobago. He was mentored by Malcolm X's eldest daughter, Ambassador Atala Shabazz. He has done many humanitarian projects all across the world. He is also a professional musician, for those of you who don't know that, and he's worked with top recording artists such as Molly Music and Dorinda Clark. You know the Clark sisters are if you're in gospel music. He is also a very, very family oriented man. Family, without any further ado, please allow me to introduce to some and present to others none other than my son, the economist of the Soul Tribe, Dex Lattimore. Let me see if we can bring him in. And wouldn't you know it? There we go. My button had frozen. So, welcome, Mr. Lattimore. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Excellent.
Yes, I'm so happy to see you here today. I know you've been very busy.
Thank you. It's
You're
good to be
welcome.
here. Good to see everybody.
And one of the things I forgot to mention is that you also, a part of your entrepreneurial, I guess, project. One of those is that you sell whole life and life insurance, and you do Medicare, and I think it's called, what is it, health care? I don't know what you call it, long
Yeah.
term care,
Uh-huh.
things.
Yes,
And you
that's correct.
and you spoke to the personal group or the private group about those things, and you'll come on to the main channel as well as sometime in the future, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, Mr. Lattimore, I brought you on today because a lot is going on in the world. The war, to my knowledge, is either coming to an end or it has ended. But what most people don't realize is I said the month of August is important because of the Lionsgate portal opening. And, during that time, you're supposed to burst through the portal, roaring like a lion, declaring your victory. So I don't know if a lot of people know that or not. But August is also very critical because we're only really 1 month away from the new fiscal year. Maybe two if you count. So this August, September is critical. And then September the 30th, 2026, at midnight, leading into October the 1st, is the beginning of a new fiscal year. And what a lot of people don't know is just 1.5, 2 months away from the fiscal year means that we could have a full on government shutdown.
Correct. It's very possible.
It's very possible because they haven't agreed completely on the finances. How do you say that? What do they need to agree on? A new is it financial policy? What do they need to agree on before the new fiscal year?
Well, if you remember during Obama's term, they often talked about the fiscal cliff that we
Mm,
were potentially going to fall off of. And so they have to come up with an agreement on in terms of things like will they raise the debt ceiling? Will they continue to accumulate more debt? And then, as you mentioned many times on your show, we're getting to the point where the world is talking about the possibility of the return to the gold standard.
mm, mm.
And so right now that is in debate a lot behind the scenes, and obviously it's coming to the forefront of people's attention as well.
And before we get into what's happening with gold, I just want to show people that we that they're saying that a government shutdown is looming, and I don't think we realize, as you have brought forth to the show, I'm going to say a month or two ago, we're still under a partial government shutdown.
Right.
A government shutdown is technically possible ahead of the October 1st fiscal deadline. However, congressional actions are underway to prevent it. That doesn't mean it has been prevented yet, though. The Senate passed a bipartisan stopgate funding measure a continuing resolution on August the 12th, the 8th, excuse me. August the 8th again was the apex or the pinnacle of that Lionsgate energy that we talked about. So they passed a bipartisan, what they call a stopgate funding measure, extending federal funding through December the 12th, although negotiations with the House remain ahead. So negotiations with the House are not complete yet. So they passed a bipartisan stopgate funding through December 11th, but it sounds like it's not completely decided. Current federal funding expires at midnight on September the 30th, 2026. The Senate passed a stopgate bill in a 96 vote to push the funding deadline to December the 11th. The House previously favored a stopgate option extending funding to December the 4th. But there are hurdles that remain. And I think that's important for us to keep in mind, not just to get excited that there's an extension in terms of what's going to happen with the finance of the fiscal plan, but the Senate version temporarily, people forget that word temporary, that doesn't mean forever, doesn't mean permanently. The Senate version temporarily blocks certain administrative grant approved changes and handles specific border or ICE funding provisions. In terms of House approval, lawmakers must reconcile differences between the House and the Senate stopgate timelines and policy details before a final package can reach the president's desk. It sounds like a final package has not reached President Trump's desk yet. And although some people are celebrating things passing through the Senate, it is not final. Since this is not final, and the fiscal deadline is approaching September the 30th at 12 midnight, it's still possible that we could have a government shutdown. Can you speak to that before we even go into gold?
Yeah. So obviously, as you mentioned, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Uh, I was on your show late last year and early this year talking about the AI bubble and the everything bubble. So we're
Mm,
looking at a possibility where things could collapse, right?
mm,
And it could happen in a sooner time than people predicted or expect. And so we're rushing, unfortunately, to a time where no one really knows where the future is, what the future holds. And the reason for the shutdown could very well be because we're reaching that cliff where
mm,
the empire falls off the cliff and
mm,
something new has to come into existence. And
mm,
so we're looking at right now what could be the case. And again, no one knows exactly what the future holds, and things kind of have to go perfectly for like the AI bubble in order for everything to work, for the expansion of the AI to come about the way people have expected it to. And so
mm,
we're really at that precipice where we're we're just trying to figure out exactly where things will go from here. But certainly we do know that what it was in the future will no longer exist for the American empire, the US government.
When you spoke of the fiscal cliff, all I could think about is Janet Yellen, who was the Fed chair under the Biden administration, saying, "We've reached the debt ceiling. We have to take extraordinary measures to heal ourselves." And she said that one of the things she thought about doing was actually taking money from government retirement or government workers' retirement in order to make themselves whole. So when she said we reached the debt ceiling, what is that? What did that mean?
Well, it's like again, the country is in $40 trillion in debt,
Mm,
and it's kind of like maxing out your credit card.
okay.
If after you've maxed it out, you can no longer spend the money, and so
Mm,
then you have to do one of a few things. You can either stop spending and start to pay off your debts, or you can ask for a credit increase, right? And so America has been basically asking for a credit increase for the past 15 years or so. Now, the way I like to look at it is, okay, the government collects $5 trillion, right? That's the amount of money that we have per year circulating.
Okay.
So between the money that the government collects in taxes, right,
Hmm.
and the other things that they collect, they we make about $5 trillion, right, but we spend per year about $7 trillion.
Wow.
And again, our overall debt is 40 trillion, right? So that's kind of like if you have a budget, a personal budget, you make $50,000 a year, but you spend $70,000 a year, and however you owe in total $400,000, right? At some point, the debt collectors are going to come and they're going to say, okay, you need to do something in order to pay off this debt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you default? Do you go into bankruptcy? Right? What in terms of a government, what governments do is they declare themselves insolvent when they can't pay off their debt. And this is where the U.S. is at right now. Is that as you mentioned again on your show several times, the government has already declared insolvency, but they have not really made it public, and they have not really shown what that looks like and what that means for the country and for the world, really.
Yes, and it's interesting because the United States Incorporated did not necessarily say that the government was insolvent. The government won't, like as you said, won't say that they're insolvent, but the United States Treasury Department, which is part of our lawful government, the Republic, came out with the report September 2025 that most people didn't even see.
Right,
And is this it? Reveals America. Yes, the United States Treasury reveals America is insolvent. And famed economists warn of fiscal catastrophe. Is your portfolio prepared? Is what Yahoo Finance said. So it's interesting. Another article that I brought up to the Soul Tribe once said that the media missed it. And it's not that they missed it, it's that the United States government itself won't come straight out and say, we don't have any money, we can't pay our debts. But the Treasury Department, which has the authority to say that because they're part of our lawful republic, actually made that announcement. And that actually happened September 2025, right before the government shut down. Yeah.
right.
So
And
interesting times.
what would that look like though? We have to ask our questions. What would it look like for the government or for the media to publicly announce that the
Mm,
nation is insolvent, right? We will
right.
have an immediate stock market crash, right? We're already having a lot of troubles in the economy, right? We already have job losses at extreme heights, right? We already have severity in homelessness in the country. And so they're trying to avoid catastrophe, right? So
Mm.
the best way to avoid catastrophe is to not bring it up. And so that's essentially what we've been doing. We've just been trying to avoid, kick the can down the road, buy
Mm.
ourselves a little more time, see if we can fix things, right, before all of the trouble hits our door and we actually have to accept where we are as a nation.
So the government is insolvent, doesn't have money, it cannot pay its debts. What else is going on in terms of the insolvency? Countries around the world used to support the United States government. Can you talk about how they supported the United States government financially and tell us if that anything has changed?
Yes. So um, governments around the world for the last 80 years have been buying US treasuries, right?
Okay.
Buying US dollars and holding them as their reserves, right? So the US dollar has been the global reserve currency for all governments. And over the last 5 to 10 years, governments have really kind of start bailing out on America and saying we don't want to hold your dollars anymore, right? Because 80 years ago, after World War II, when America won the war, uh, or America helped to their allies to win the war, America became the dominant country and the dominant power of the world.
Mm.
And so it was beneficial for all of these nations to hold the US dollar, right? The dollar was the strongest currency in the world. But obviously, times change, right? Empires rise and then they fall.
Oh.
Um, Before the US was Britain, right? Britain was the global power. And after World War II, Britain basically transferred their power, handed over the baton to the United States.
Mm.
What happened during the world wars, Europe had to finance the wars because obviously World War One and World War II occurred in Europe, right? So those nations were devastated after the war. And in order to finance the war, they sold their gold to the US and they
Mm.
borrowed money, right? Post World War II, America had accumulated basically all of the gold from the major empires, right? The major countries of the world, which were the European powers at the time. And then that's the reason why uh, during Bretton Woods, it was decided that the US dollar would become the dominating dollar because they were backed by gold at the time.
See, were you going to say something? I was going to ask you a question if you weren't. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, you said countries all around the world were buying up United States Treasury bond. They're buying their debt. You explained to me one way how they would United States would pay that money. Can you explain that? What that looks like buying up a debt or Treasury bonds?
Yeah, so when you buy a bond, you're basically giving money to the government. You're loaning money to the government,
Okay.
and the government gives you an interest rate on that money.
Mm.
So a regular person, for example, can buy U.S. bonds. Right? Say
Okay.
you buy $1,000 of U.S. bonds, U.S. Treasuries. What the government will do is pay you the interest rate, say
Mm.
at 5%, for example. So they'll pay you that 5% each year until the bond matures. Once
Okay.
the bond matures, then they will give you back your principal of $1,000, for example.
I see.
So governments, they hold billions of dollars, right? Japan has, I believe it's about $1.5 trillion
Mm.
of U.S. treasuries. And
Okay.
so even when you look at what's been going on in Japan, Japan has been in the news over the last several weeks
Hmm.
and several months because their currency is in a crisis. And if things get too bad, then they will have to start selling their US treasuries, right? They will have to start dumping their dollars and dumping their treasuries and
Mm.
putting them back into the market, into
Okay.
the global market. The problem with that is, again, no one wants the US dollar and no one wants the US treasury anymore. So when there are no buyers, then you have a problem. And currently, the US is in that problem, in that crisis mode where, again, nobody wants to hold their currency.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so this is the reason why all of these nations over the past several years have been actually selling their dollars, selling their treasuries, and buying gold.
Mm. Speaking of gold, David is saying 55 years tomorrow off the gold standard. Tomorrow is 5 times 5, which is 25. So 55 years we've been off the gold standard. Very interesting. All right. I just wanted to mention that since you mentioned gold.
Yes. Right. So when you look at you look at gold and its relevance to the US history and the world, in the 1930s, after or during the Depression, the president of the United States of the time made an announcement that U.S. citizens could no longer hold gold, right?
Hmm.
So they confiscated the gold of the citizens and they changed the exchange rate from $20 an ounce to $35 an ounce. And essentially, what they started doing is printing money, right? The Federal Reserve started printing money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you fast forward from the 1930s to 1971, and in 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard, right? Because nations around the world were saying, "Hey, we want our gold, right? We don't want to hold dollars. We want the gold that you're promising us." Because even though the nation said, "Okay, the citizens can no longer hold gold," right? Because a dollar is essentially an IOU. It's
Mm-hmm.
an IOU stating that this paper is worth this amount of gold, and anytime you want, you can exchange this paper currency for the gold that we have in our vaults in the banks. When the citizens were no longer allowed to do that after the 30s, they still had a window of time where governments around the world were still able to transfer their paper dollars and collect the gold. But America was having a problem because too many countries were buying the gold and not holding the dollar. And so this is the reason why Nixon said, okay, well, we're just going to eliminate the gold standard. Right now, we're on a petrodollar, and you don't really need to worry about how much dollars are in the system. Just
Mm-hmm.
know that the dollar is the strongest currency, and we also have the strongest military to back our dollar. So
Right.
you're just going to do what we say, and you just have to accept it.
So now here we are. Go ahead. We're going to say something else.
Go ahead.
I was going to say now here we are where all countries are deciding to use their own local currencies. At least they made an agreement, and they've also repatriated their gold back to their countries. We're in a precarious situation to some, it seems, because it looks like the dollar is collapsing. Other countries are using gold. What's going to happen here in America? But I'll yield to you. Or
Well,
using
that
gold to back their currencies, their local currencies. Go ahead.
right. That has yet to be fully determined. But as you have mentioned many times on your channel, many countries are, or excuse me, many states are actually putting gold back into the market and saying that we will start to use gold as the standard. So
Mhm.
really, it's only been again 80 years that we've been on this dollar system
Mhm.
where the US dollar was the currency that was used. And before that, it was silver and gold. So we're really
Mhm.
returning back to the times where we have to use silver and gold. And at the very least, we have to fix our currency based on the amount of gold that we have in our reserves, which kind of really puts a limit, it puts a ceiling on how much of the currency is actually in existence, right? Because you can only have a fixed amount of currency when you're actually pegging it to something like a hard asset like gold and silver.
You're right. As I have reported that many times, and I'll just bring up a quick article here that was put out. I think this is the Sound Money Defense League. And I've been reporting on gold and silver since you and I lived in Ghana in 2014. And we actually lived on the gold mines. And you can speak on that in a minute if you'd like. We lived on the gold mines. We saw the Chinese mining gold like crazy. And we saw European nations mining gold as well. And so we knew something was changing in 2014 and 2015 when we were there. And so I started paying close attention to that. And at the time, I realized there was a book came out that said Africa is China's second continent. That was in 2014. So I knew something was going on with gold and silver, and you were really looking into gold at that time. And as I paid attention, state by state, states started acknowledging gold and silver as legal tender, meaning you could buy local goods and services with silver and gold, but they were quiet about it. And what they were doing behind the scenes was repealing or removing the state sales taxes from precious metals. Because when you remove the taxes from precious metals, you are acknowledging that metals cannot be taxed lawfully according to our republic. And you're now saying silver and gold, they're not a commodity, they're actually real money. So to date, we have, the last article I saw said 45 states had repealed or removed the taxes from precious metals. But then when I looked up, so what's the remaining 5 states? Now, and now the articles that you see, it'll say 4 states remain instead of 5 that have not repealed silver and taxes from the sales of precious metals. And if my memory served me correctly, that would be Hawaii, New Mexico, Maine, and there's another one that escapes me. Washington. Those are only the 4 states that remain that have not removed taxes from precious metals. So we are very, very close, Mr. Lattimore, to being, in alignment with the rest of the world. And I'll show you this
Absolutely.
one. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll show this one last article that says, and I've been reporting on this, you and I have been since February 2023. The whole world has been hurtling or rushing back toward gold as money. And I yield to you.
Definitely. The world, as you mentioned, is running back to gold as money. And we can see that in the price of gold, right?
Hmm.
So if we look right now, today, gold is at $4,400,
Okay.
right? $4,450 currently. And even just the last time I was on your show last month, gold was hovering around $4,000,
Hmm.
right? So in just really, it took off again about a week and a half ago, and it
Okay.
shot up. I would say last week from Wednesday to Friday, it shot up 10%.
Hmm.
All right, and so we've been hovering at that same place over the last week. But when you take a look back at gold, um, really for the last 2 months, it was hovering around the $4,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
But gold had taken a huge decline since its peak. It peaked in January of 2026 at
Mm-hmm.
about $5,400,
Yes. Yes.
and from the start of the war with Iran, gold started taking a dip, and it
Mm.
really dipped to about 33% decline from its peak up until about a week ago. Really, when you look at, again, looking at the war in Iran, it's pretty much been coming to a close.
Okay.
And since that time period, governments have gotten back into the purchasing of gold because they know, obviously, that gold is real money, and they are putting that into their banks and their coffers to be able to have and store. And when the revaluation comes that you mentioned often in your show, they will be able to say, this is the amount of gold that we have, right? And based on this amount of gold, this is the value and the strength of our currency.
Mm. Mm.
So when we're looking at, again, when we're looking at the price of gold, if you pull up a chart on gold and
Mm-hmm.
you go back for the 1 year period.
So can I, which you want me to pull it up
Uh,
there? Okay, I
yes.
see one on goldprice.com, but I don't know if I could, will it show me? Oh yeah, I think it will. Hold on. I see your questions, family. We'll get to those during our question and answer period. Just a minute. Okay, gold price performance here.
Hmm.
Let me see.
And over the last year, gold is up 31%,
Okay.
right? So gold has really been taking off
Yeah.
for the
Lot of.
last year, right? And if you can look at, I don't know if you are able to see in the last 5 years, gold
Mm-hmm.
is up about 150%,
About
right?
140
So gold has over,
right here.
yes,
Uh-huh.
gold has doubled in
Mm.
price more than doubled in price in the last few years. And so
Mm,
that's just an indication that, again, countries are now accumulating gold. And it's actually gotten to the point where the US is announcing, right? The financial advisors are advising wealthy people to add gold into their portfolio,
mm,
because up
mm-hmm,
until last year, the financial consultants advised people against holding gold, which is ironic, but they would say that you want to have your portfolio to be about 60% stocks and 40% bonds. Now they're saying you need to have at least about 10 to 15% of your portfolio in gold. So
mm,
now we're seeing a trend where even the US citizens and the wealthy people are now accumulating gold. So
mm,
for the average person, this shows that you do want to hold gold, right? Because obviously, as you mentioned, gold is real money, right? It's a physical asset that has value, right? It has intrinsic value. The US dollar is a fiat currency. It does not have value except for the ability to use as an exchange mechanism to purchase goods.
mm. Yeah, and gold, and I was also say my favorite metal, silver, as well. Can
Yes.
you
And
talk
so
a
if
little?
you if
Go
you
ahead.
pull up, yeah, if
Hmm.
you pull up a chart of silver, right? Silver again, same thing. Silver took off over the last 2 years. Really, from January 2025 up until January of 2026, silver went
Wow,
on a crazy spree.
wow,
And
wow.
over the last year, it's up 70%.
Yes, yes,
Right. Over the last 5 years, 177%, or 171%, rather, excuse me.
yes.
But we're just seeing that now everybody, at least in the background, people are nations and wealthy people are accumulating silver and gold in high numbers. And it's really had a parabolic move upward over the last few years. Now, um, again, when we look at Iran, right? Go ahead and can you go back up to that?
Yes, I was going to ask if you can
Because over the
address
last 6 months,
why do we see a decline in both gold and silver over the last 6 months? That could cause some people to be a little, panicky. Like, oh my gosh, is my investment
right?
declining?
Mhm.
What's going on?
So before January of 2026, gold and silver had taken a parabolic move straight up.
Hmm.
And it was nations that were buying in excess.
Yeah.
But once the war started with Iran, then nations had to sell their gold, right? Because
Hmm.
you you buy gold because of its value, but you need dollars in order to purchase goods, right?
Right.
So
Right.
what what the nations were doing, they were selling some of their gold because they had already accumulated so much um in the when they purchased. If you purchase silver, for example, at $20 or $30 a year or two ago, and you watched it shoot up to $120, then it's a great time to collect some to lock in some gains, as they
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
And you sell a small portion of your gold, you sell a small portion of your silver in order to gain US dollars and buy oil, for example, right? Buy the products that you need. And so nations were doing this exact thing once the war started, right? Once the war in Iran started, then the gas prices and the oil prices shot up
Yes.
astronomically, right?
Yes.
About 30%. And so other nations said, okay, well, since we have this valuable asset being gold, being silver, we're going to sell a little bit of this in order to be able to purchase the oil that we need to keep our economy going.
Mm. Ex-
So over that time, if you look at the price of gold and silver from January 29th, it took a 10% decline. Then it
mm,
went up again up until March, right? February 28th of March 2nd, that's when the war in Iran started.
mm,
Then it took a nice downward trend, and silver from its high went from $120 roundabout to hovering in the $60 range. Right. So that's a 50% decline from its height. Now, if you're an investor, you use this as a buying opportunity, right?
mhm,
It's just like if you like Nikes and you go to the Nike store in January and you buy a pair of Nikes for $100, and you go 3, 4 months later and you still like Nike and
mhm.
you want to buy another pair of Nike shoes and they say 50% off, most people are going to say, hey, that's a perfect opportunity to buy two pair, right? Because
Yeah.
I was already going to buy it at $100. I brought $100 being prepared to buy a pair of shoes. If I see it at 50% discount, then this is a perfect opportunity for me to buy two pairs.
You know that remind me of give me two pair. Give me what was it? Two pair of my
Stuffing
Air
them
Force
Air
Ones.
Force Ones. Uh-huh.
Give me two pair. I think that was in the 1990s.
Early 2000s.
Was it early 2000s? Yes.
Uh-huh,
Okay.
uh-huh.
Uh,
Now, for the people who were late in the buying spree, if you bought silver at $100, if you bought silver at $120, then when you watched it go down, you said, "Well, I don't want to hold this," because
mm,
a lot of people were not true investors, understanding the value of what they were purchasing. And so they saw it depreciating and thought that it was really depreciating in value. And so a lot of people started to sell their silver, started to sell their gold because they bought at the height and they were buying it with the expectation that it was just going to go up.
mhm.
But that's not necessarily how assets move, right? That's not how even stocks move. Everything has a nice movement. Things go up and things go down. But again, if you bought silver at $20, $30 and you saw it shoot up to $100, $120, you said, okay, well, this is a nice time to lock in some gains.
Mhm.
All right. This is a nice time to sell a little bit of the top at the top and hold the remaining amount and expect that the prices will go down some, right? Take off some of those buyers who were just in for the move up, and once it goes down, you use that again as another buying opportunity.
Yeah, you gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to
Exactly.
walk away, know when to run. My son's a musician. That my husband, their father, was a consummate, a wonderful musician, very very talented. So all my children are musicians. So whenever I hear certain phrases, automatically I think of a song. Everything
Exactly.
you touch is a song. Shout out to Chris Marcus. Chris Marcus is in the show. He might not be in the chat, but he's watching today. We're talking about silver and gold. Chris Marcus is a great friend of mine. I just want to shout him out because we've been talking a lot lately about precious metals. Chris Marcus has a channel called Arcadia Economics. Shout out to Chris. Subscribe to his channel, like his videos because he talks about silver mainly, but silver and gold. And he is the one that actually introduced me to Andy Sheckman. And as you all know, I've been affiliated with Andy Sheckman for a long time, who owns Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. But I want to shout him out. Please, if you want to learn more about silver and what's going on with silver prices, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to his channel. But I shouted him out, Dex, because I remember my first ounce of silver that I got was actually one of the first ounces, I would say. I bought my first ounce, I want to say, like right before Chris had a silver symposium, but I just bought it off the whim. And then Chris, he had a silver symposium in 2020, and he started talking about silver. And I joined that symposium. He sent me a silver coin. All right. And that silver coin at the time was like as low as, I want to say, was it when I my first ounce was like 11 or 12, no, $14 when he sent me that first new silver ounce, that I 1 ounce silver. I might have been like between 14 $15 an ounce. So I held on to what I bought, and I held on to what he gave me, because I just bought one just because, you know, off the whim, people were talking about silver, and I forgot I even had it. Chris sent me that 1 ounce of silver, and I was part of a silver symposium, and oh my God, it reawakened something in me, or unlocked something in me. And now that he and I are talking, and you are talking about silver and gold, now I'm like, that 1 ounce that was like $15 an ounce, it has multiplied immensely. I will not sell my silver. I don't care if it goes down. I don't care what it does. It fluctuates. I'm not selling my silver, because at what, 15, $16 an ounce? How much of an increase is that now at $65 an ounce? It has increased what, by 4 times, 5 times?
Right.
Yeah.
3, 4 times. And so when you look, when silver was at $15 and it went to 120, that was a 7x. Right.
Wow. Wow.
So this is the reason though that investors actually do sell some when you have a parabolic move like that, because if you, excuse me, if you purchase silver when it was $15
Mm-hmm.
and you watch it go accumulate value up to $120, that's an excellent opportunity to cash in some silver and
Mm-hmm.
buy things that you need,
Mm.
right? So you might take some silver and buy a car, right? You might take some gold and buy a house, right?
Whoa.
Something that you have that is going to also be valuable, right? But even when we consider again what happened earlier this year, people were buying gold and silver up until the war, and then gas prices shot up. So that's
Right.
another reason why the price of gold and silver went down, is because people still have to live, and
Mm.
you can't go currently to a gas station and say, "Hey, give me $20 with this ounce of silver
Mm.
on my tank."
Mm.
You have to have cash. And so a lot of people were selling their silver, selling their gold in order to have the liquid money, right? And so again, we do want to understand what is going on and what has gone on in the markets, so that we can be able to be sound investors, and we can know what we have, what we hold, and the value that it holds, and then be able to know how to use it in the opportunities that it presents itself as, right? But you don't want to be foolish in holding things and selling things at the wrong time and for the
Mm.
wrong reasons.
And you were talking about, making sure we have silver and gold as investors. Somebody might say, well, I'm not really an investor. I'm an everyday person. How can I afford gold at what, $4,300 an ounce? And silver, even at $65 an ounce, is a lot. Do you have any advice for how people can get into this investment of silver and gold? And one thing Andy Scheckman did also teach me is that silver and gold is not just an investment, it's wealth, something you can pass down to your family, your children,
Exactly.
your posterity. So, how can people, if they're interested in accumulating wealth, precious metals, how can they do it affordably?
Right. So there are things that you've mentioned on your show before, like gold backs, right? That is a great way. You can also buy lower denominations. You don't have to buy it by the ounce. You can buy it by the gram, all right? And then
Mm-hmm.
also there are things that people often don't think about, which is investing in mining stocks.
Mm.
So that is always an option, and it's also a great option, because a lot of people hold stocks, own stocks, but they own only one or two types of stocks. They might own the S&P 500, for example, or other index funds. They might own the NASDAQ, right? A lot of people have 401ks and IRAs, but
Mm.
most people don't even know what they have in their stock portfolio, right? Because their company invests for them. But again, looking at mining stocks is an excellent opportunity to be able to buy in small increments and be able to invest in their portfolios and invest in wealth building, right? In order to have a nice diversified portfolio.
Yeah, and speaking about diversified portfolios, you've come and spoken with our private group about how to add to your portfolio, how to add silver and gold, how to add or consider adding mining stocks and some other commodities. If you're interested, family, in joining the private group so we can talk further about investments, Dex Lattimore, who is an economist, and he also has colleagues that are certified financial professionals, often or come into the group. He comes often. He's now starting to bring some of his colleagues to come in. Please consider joining the private group here. Here is the link. I'll put it in the chat. You can also just go to any of my videos or on my main YouTube channels and just put in hit the join button. Once you hit the join button, you follow the prompts and you're in. As a matter of fact, not today, tomorrow, we're going to talk about in my private group how there is another investment other than gold and silver that people are missing. They're looking over that may be more valuable than silver. Some people say this might be the new gold. So hit that join button, family. You'll be in. We talk about investments in silver, gold, other metals, as well as foreign currencies and other investments. In other words, how do you beef up your portfolio? So join a private group, you'll learn more about that. And also, if you are interested in silver and gold, as Mr. Lattimore said, you can buy lower denominations of gold and silver. Okay. You can go to, and I brought this website up while he was speaking, and then I'll yield the floor back to him, goldbacks.com. Goldback.com. Right now, you can buy one goldback. This is what it looks like here. There's a one, I think it's popping up on yours. These are what goldbacks look like. This is real 24 karat gold on a polymer note. One goldback costs $8.78. This is used right now in many states as to buy as money or legal tender to buy local goods and services. We first brought this website to the attention of my private group 2 years ago. A lot of people didn't even know about goldbacks. I've been talking about goldbacks for almost 10 years when I was talking about gold RM notes. But we brought this website to the private group. We taught them how to use goldbacks to buy local goods and services. And right on this website, you can put in your zip code and it will tell you the merchants in your state that accept gold right now, gold backs and silver for local goods and services. And if you are a merchant and you want to accept gold backs, it talks about how you can do that. This is an amazing time in which we live, family. We are not being left out of the gold standard.